When you think about the pantheon of unpopular European leaders, your mind probably goes straight to the likes of French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, and the recently departed British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. But one deeply unpopular leader that's flown under the radar is Estonian Prime Minister Kristen Michal. One recent poll put his job approval rating at just 19%, and another found that he's the first choice as Prime Minister for just 4% of Estonians. To make matters worse, Michal's governing coalition lost its parliamentary majority this week and is polling terribly ahead of the next election in 7 months. So in this video, we're going to try and explain why Estonia's government is so unpopular. Can Europe depend on Donald Trump's America to defend it in the event of an attack? Can it afford to? In the newest issue of our magazine, we examine Europe's options and obstacles for a post-NATO world. That's just one of the articles in our longest issue ever. Subscribe to get your copy by clicking the link in the description. For some quick context, the liberal centre-right Reform Party has been one of the dominant parties in Estonian politics for around 30 years. It's been the largest party in the Estonian parliament since 2007, and it's held the premiership since 2005, except from 2016 to 2021. You'll probably recognise Kaja Kallas, who became the Estonian Prime Minister in 2021. She led the Reform Party to a comfortable victory at the 2023 parliamentary election and formed a coalition with the centre-left Social Democratic Party and the centrist-ish Estonia 200. Kallas resigned in mid-2024 to become the EU's foreign policy chief, and she was succeeded as both the Reform leader and Estonian Prime Minister by the current incumbent Kristen Michal. In March last year, Michal kicked the Social Democrats out of his coalition, leaving him with a two-party coalition. So just how unpopular is Michal and his government? The most recent Norstat poll puts Michal's approval rating at just 19%, while 62% do not approve of his work as PM. Furthermore, when asked in another poll which party leader they prefer as Prime Minister, Michal had just 4% backing. Admittedly, no leader got more than 20% because of the fragmented party landscape, but 4% is pretty unambiguously bad. And as a final sign of his government's unpopularity, the two remaining governing parties have collapsed in the polling averages. Combined, Reform and Estonia 200 registered just 15% support. Reform specifically polls in the low teens, and Estonia 200 has fallen well below the 5% threshold for parliamentary representation. Meanwhile, several opposition parties have been on the rise. The right-wing Isamaa Party has led the polls for approaching 3 years now, and the populist Centre Party has climbed to second place. The point we're making is that Kristen Michal and his government are incredibly unpopular, to the point that he's plausibly the most unpopular leader in Europe. So what exactly has gone wrong here? Well, one early issue that the government faced shortly after the 2023 election was a scandal relating to then Prime Minister Kaja Kallas' husband. Specifically, it emerged that he'd maintained some business ties in Russia, which clearly looked at odds with the staunchly pro-Ukraine platform of Kallas' government. But our first main factor will be familiar to other countries too: the cost of living. Estonia's inflation rate came down to a reasonable 2% in July, the lowest in the Eurozone. But zoom out a bit, and you can see how tough things have been over the past few years. Inflation peaked at nearly 25% in mid-2022 amid the disruption caused by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Even recently, it was as high as 6.1% in August 2025 and 3.7% in May of this year. The point is that a couple of months of inflation at 2-point-something% does not mean that people are no longer feeling the squeeze of years' worth of elevated inflation. Estonia's broader economic situation is pretty gloomy too. The labour market is strained, with the unemployment rate above 7% for the first quarter in 2026. This reflects the fact that Estonia is only just emerging out of a pretty severe 3-year recession, fueled by the back-to-back shocks of the pandemic, Russian invasion of Ukraine, and extended geopolitical turmoil. Estonia, like all EU states bordering Russia, was negatively impacted by the cutting off and sanctioning of Russia. Plus, an ongoing economic slump in Finland, Estonia's neighbour to the north and its largest trading partner, is also hurting Estonia's economic prospects. None of this has helped the government in the court of public opinion, but there have also been specific decisions that have contributed to its unpopularity. First and foremost are tax hikes. Despite not really mentioning increasing taxes during the 2023 election campaign, the new government relatively quickly announced hikes to sales tax and income tax, something that Kaja Kallas acknowledged was essentially committing political suicide. VAT rose 2 points to 22% in 2024, and another 2 points to 24% the following year. This was meant to be temporary, but Kristen Michal, who had become Prime Minister by then, confirmed that it would be a permanent hike. Similarly, the personal income tax rate increased from 20% to 22% in 2025. These were not arbitrary increases. They aim to ensure stable financing for Estonia to increase its defence spending and improve its military capabilities, a key priority for the government as it stares down the long-term threat of Russia. This is a fundamental question that so many governments across Europe are facing. How can they increase defence spending to record levels? Raising taxes and/or cutting spending elsewhere certainly frees up budget to do so, but it will likely be a very politically unpopular move. Communication over the various tax changes was poor too, as mixed messaging and U-turns caused confusion. For instance, in 2025, a planned temporary defence tax was replaced by a permanent VAT hike. At the same time, a plan to raise income tax further to 24% was cancelled, as was a planned corporate profit levy. For businesses and individuals alike, this created genuine confusion, and the whole saga does not paint a picture of a government that is in control and has a plan. In fact, as time's gone on, the Reform-led coalition has had less and less control. The Social Democrats' expulsion from the coalition last year, amid disagreements over issues including tax reform, was meant to renew, streamline, and unify the remaining, more ideologically consistent coalition, but it hasn't really worked. It was left with a narrow majority that has now been lost due to 2 MPs quitting the governing parties at the start of this week. Now, we should say a quick word on Estonia 200, since the junior coalition party has collapsed even more dramatically. One of the reasons for its rapid polling decline was a 2023 scandal over the alleged misuse of Ukraine aid money by an NGO led by one of Estonia 200's MPs. But more broadly, the party has been tarnished by its presence in the governing coalition, something that's turned off more progressive and reform-minded voters. Upcoming state budget negotiations and a presidential election in September, in which lawmakers make up the electorate, buys the struggling coalition some time, and it's entirely possible that it limps on until the next parliamentary elections in March. In that case, Kristen Michal has a good chance of remaining PM until then, not because of any public goodwill, but because it's hard to imagine that anyone in this party would want to be the one that takes the leadership and has to immediately lead the party to a historic election defeat. Now, this all plays into broader stories around this region, like this one about Russia closing its border crossings with Estonia and other countries. A story that's constantly updating as more and more outlets are reporting on it, so it might feel like it's hard to keep up with the ever-changing media landscape. Right now, there are currently 76 sources reporting on it, with most of the coverage coming from the right. This type of analysis is why Ground News has been our favourite way to stay up to date with the news since 2023. It's no secret by this point how much we're fans of Ground News. They've been long-time supporters of this channel and independent news media at large, and they truly help us to understand the political climate better. For example, without Ground News, we wouldn't be able to easily compare the headlines for this story on closed border crossings, and see that the left chooses to highlight the closed border crossings themselves, while the right questions whether it means a new Russian mobilization is on the way. Ground News not only gives you an easy way to digest the news, but it also offers a comprehensive breakdown into the ownership, bias distribution, and factuality of each article, allowing you to dive even deeper. If you're worried about how much you can trust what's being said about a specific story, with the click of a button you can filter and sort every story by factuality level, helping you to easily grasp the reliability of each outlet. And with their blind spot feed, you're able to see everything you might not normally stumble across, both local and international, keeping you fully informed even outside your media bubble. Ground News is completely algorithm free too, so you're never forced into a narrative or told what to think. That's why we're partnering with them to offer 40% off their unlimited access Vantage plan. All you have to do is subscribe through the link in the description, or go to ground.news/TLDR, or scan the QR code on screen. And that way you'll be supporting an independent news platform working to make the media landscape more transparent.